Okay, so we're going to plot the still life with our pencil here. Accurately, using it as a tool. And jump right in and let's go over this. So on my still life, the first thing I want to do is make sure that I can keep my arm at an arm's length straight with my elbow locked. So I have my piece vertically in front of me, attached to this drawing board. You can have it at an angle or use an easel, or you can use a chair turned around in front of you and prop it against the back of it. I do that a lot if I'm sitting down. You just need to be able to stretch your arm out straight. Now I'm going to be plotting this the same exact size as this, so it will be a lot simpler to follow along. So let's just get started. The first thing I want to do is kind of find my midpoint over here. So I have my elbow locked, one eye closed. And if I turn my pencil, I can kind of see the midpoint ends up right around the corner of this jar. So I'm going to come over here into my page. Again, my elbow's locked. Try not to move around too much. If you're worried about shuffling your feet from your position too much, you can mark it with tape. Kind of marking that midsection kind of roughly right now, considering I'm trying to hold my camera at the same time. Okay, so this is about where that midpoint is. It's also about where the corner of this jar is. So now let's figure out the length of this jar. I'm going to do this by picking my longest spoon. I'm locking my elbow again. Keep one eye closed. Putting the top of my spoon to the top point of that. And since I am drawing this exact, I can actually come over here and just mark that exactly. But I keep my thumb in that spot so I can compare it to this jar. And I see it's around 1.5 lengths. You can use another pencil to mark this if it helps. Now if you want to double check that, since this is an exact size to size, you can actually move your thumb. Bring that over. Yeah, that's pretty satisfactory. So now, keep your arm straight. Try to use only straight lines when you're constructing. Straight lines and ellipses, when you need ellipses. It's a lot easier to keep from making mistakes if you stick to straight lines, and then you can block in those shapes later. So again, this is size to size. So, sorry, I'm trying to do that awkward angle. I can actually just find those exact measurements and bring them over if I want. I can double check these angles. Lock your elbow. Let me check this corner to corner. Bring that same angle over. Looks like I might have mine a little too tall. So let's double check that. Lock your elbow. Let me add this ellipse. So I'm roughing in those ellipses. Okay, so if this drawing were not the exact same size, and you couldn't just bring the exact same measurements over, the way you would do this would be to find one measurement in your drawing. Say, for example, we picked this spoon, the head of the spoon. You would lock your arm, find that measurement, and then you just use that measurement to determine the height of everything else. So this jar is almost 3 lengths long with that measurement. Keeping your thumb there, using that same measurement, you could then find the length of everything with that same measurement. And you would just carry that over. So now let's roughen the rest of this jar. Okay, so I want to find out how long this dip in the neck needs to be. So I lock my elbow. Here's my thumb. Again, this is exact same size, so that kind of marks where the bottom of this recess is here. Okay, so now maybe I need to know how far in does it go. So I'm finding the edge of this vase, moving my thumb over to find just how deep that goes. Lock your elbow, bring that over, keep one eye closed, and I can mark that. So now I'm just going to kind of connect that with straight lines because we're early on. We're constructing in straight lines. Now we can kind of roughen our spoons. Okay, so lock your elbow, keep one eye closed. Now we're going to be finding angles. I want to find the angle of these spoons first because I need to know where the spine of this is going before I can rough in a round head in the right spot. So the first thing I'm doing is finding this most outer spoon. Lock your elbow, find that angle by lining up with the neck of that spoon. I can see it sitting right inside the lip of this. So remember, there's going to be a thickness to this lip. Find the angle of that spoon. Mark it just inside that lip. Sorry. I had more trouble when I'm holding the camera. Okay, so that's a bit messy. We marked where the top of the spoon is going to be. Let's find the, oops, sorry for that mark, the length of this head. Okay, and we can also find the width, since this is an exact same size drawing. Let's kind of mark that ellipse. Just do a rough ellipse for now. You'll get to hone in that shape a little better later. So now I want to find the angle of the second spoon. Lock my elbow. I see it's about halfway. And I'm going to go ahead and find this other angle too. It lines up right about with that spoon. So let me see how tall these heads are. Now, if I want to find out where the bottoms could end up, I could again double check against other objects in my scene. So let's say I want to find out where this bottom of this spoon head ends up. Both of these. I can double check it against this corner here by finding the angle between this corner and the bottom of these angles. Lock your arm. Bring that over and mark it. That tells me about where the bottom of these heads should end up. Now I can find the length of the top of these. Going from there. Keep your arm locked. Again, you can find the width of each one. This is an exact same size drawing. Let's roughen some ellipses here. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and roughen this table and this egg, and then we will talk about double checking everything and honing in that final line and making sure it's proportionate. So next I want to go ahead and mark my table. Here's my corner. I can see my corner is slightly above where the bottom of this vase ends up. So let's see. Here's my corner. I'm going to mark that because it's hard to see. Here's the angle to that corner. And the bottom of my vase. Mark your elbow. Okay, let's find the angle of this table. Mark your elbow and bring that over. Same here. Find that angle. Always just draw straight through your object because you can erase that later on into a lot more accurate than trying to stop a line. Don't try to stop your line and then come over here and finish it. Don't ever do that. Just draw straight through. Kind of an edge for that table. Alright, so now let's hop over here and plot these eggs. I'm seeing how far the distance is between the egg. Now I'm checking the width of the egg. How far between the edge of here and where this one starts. Ends. Mark that. There. Now the width of this egg. I'm going from that back line. So we got the front. We have an egg here and an egg here. But let's double check the heights. How tall are these eggs? Remember to lock your elbow and close one eye. Oh, this should end up above the table. And then this one. Kind of connecting the dots here. Eggs are very rough shape to get correctly, but I'm just roughing in ellipses for this moment. So now I kind of have some rough measurements, but I want to clean this up and make this look more like the line work I need. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to make sure everything is correct. As we do this, double check everything against each other. This is called the relationships between objects. Okay, so let's start with our spoons that are highest up, and we'll work our way down. Okay, so one thing I can do is make sure my spoon is proportionally correct by double checking it against other objects. So let's double check the top of the spoon against the top of this one by finding that angle between the two. I have my arm locked. Now I can bring that over and see if that's correct. It seems like these are maybe a bit high, so I'll kind of mark that. Alright, let's do the same with the bottom against the bottom. Find that angle. Okay. Now, I want to double check the width of my spoons one more time. I can double check with exact measurements. This one did seem a bit wide to me. So I'll check this one. Now, these aren't perfect ovals. There's a bit of an angle and a taper to the bottom. I can hold my pencil up against this bottom angle to kind of find that a little better. Now I can start kind of connecting these dots. I know the top is going to be a little bit more flat. I found the angle of this taper at the bottom. I can see there's a lip to this pencil, a little thickness here. Go ahead and add that. You can kind of break this down in straight lines when you're just constructing. There's a lot less room for mistakes with ellipses and straight lines only. Now I can add a little thickness to this neck. If you want to double check that angle, just hold your pencil up against it, lock your elbow. Now I want to make sure that the mouth of this is exactly where I need it, so I know where to end these necks, okay? So I can find where that lines up against these corner points. And I can go ahead and solidify that a little bit. There's a bit of a curve to these corners. They're not exactly pointy. I'm trying to press it kind of dark so you can see the final line work a little bit better. Alright, so now I'm going to kind of rough in this next spoon. I've double checked my widths here. You can double check your angles to see which way things are going to turn with the head of this spoon. Keep the straight lines as much as possible. Remember, there's a lip here, an edge. And you want to kind of mark that shadow line a little bit if you want. Okay, so just from my sight, this still looks a bit too wide. So I'm kind of modifying the widths. Again, using my pencil to double check everything. Don't have my eraser on hand, so I can't clean up my old lines, but now let's double check this other pencil next to it. I'm honing in on my angles here. I'm kind of connecting the dots. While I build up this spoon. Double checking the angles at every turn. Again, connecting the dots. Then I can kind of adjust accordingly. Now, you should be doing this with a much lighter pencil than me. Perhaps an HB or an H even. Or lighter even. Because these construction lines are going to end up crazy. And as you can see, mine are dark and starting to get muddied. I'm doing dark on purpose so that you can see it easily. But you definitely don't want to construct with a dark pencil. It's not so easy to erase. Now I'm kind of closing off that lip. Now that I have that kind of finished, I'll fill in this dark. Make it a little less confusing. Okay, so now I can kind of refine the shapes of this vase a little bit. I can smooth out this neck. And you can double check all of this with your pencil. I could find out, is this the exact width I need this skinny part of this neck? And I see that mine seems to measure slightly wider. So in double checking, I see my problem. I drew my lip. This lip goes up farther than I've drawn mine. So I can erase that first line and bring it in and adjust accordingly. This is how double checking all your measurements helps. You can do the same for this vase. Make sure this entire time you're standing from the same position. I have been moving around quite a bit, so I know my measurements are starting to be off because I'm trying to film at the same time. But definitely, again, you can mark tape on the floor, around the chair of your feet. I mean, your chair feet, or your human feet. I'm kind of making sure this ellipse isn't quite so curved. It's pretty close to the horizon line. And so now, let's say I want to add these bands, these painted bands on here. Okay, I can lock my arm. Try to find that exact length. Remember, this is going to follow a curve because it's going around a curved surface. You could very much double check this even further by double checking where these should end up here and here as well. You could double check it by checking its relativity against other things. So I could double check the bottom corner of this band against the top corner of this spoon. Find that angle. Lock your arm. Bring it over and see if it matches. Okay, now let's double check the bottom corner of this side against the top of this spoon. Like your elbow. Is that pretty good? It's slightly off. Let's say I want to double check my vase one more time. I can double check the bottom corner against the corner of this table. Find that angle. Mark your elbow. Okay, it looks pretty good. What about the bottom corner of this against the top corner? Let's figure that. Mark your elbow. Let's see how that pencil keeps the same angle. So you could do this as much as you want. I could check this corner's angle against this spoon, and then against the top of this egg, and then against the corner on this page. You could double check anything against anything by just finding the angle between those two objects and bringing it over and making sure it's the same. If it requires a different angle for that to go through both of those points, then you know it's incorrect and you can fix it. So really, this means there's a couple ways to check. You can use your thumb to find the measurement and double check that way. You can use your pencil to find the angle of something. Let's say I want to find the angle of this corner, this table edge. You can double check that way. And then you can also check the invisible angle between two things. So, for example, the top of the spoon against the corner of this, I can find that invisible angle and see how those things are relative to each other. This is 3 different ways you can use your pencil to double check these things. So now let's finish these painted bands. I've got one more right here. I'm just going to rough it in. Again, it can be double checked by finding where exactly on this neck it should start and end. There's also one kind of around the bottom here. I'm just going to rough it in. So let's double check these eggs. I want to first make sure these are in the right spot. I'm going to check where they are relative to other things. So let's check the top of this tall spoon against the bottom of this foreground egg. That places it a little bit more over here. So I'll mark that. Okay, and then I'm going to double check the top of this egg against this corner. Now, with that in mind, let me find the angle from the top to the side of this egg, as well as the width. And the same with the other side. Okay, so that means I likely had my egg a little too far to the right the first time. Now I'm kind of honing in that final ellipse. Now I'm double checking this other egg. So I'm checking the angle between this point and the bottom of this egg. Put it right about there. Let me double check the top of this egg against the corner of this vase. Find the angle. Okay. So now I'm kind of using all the double checked work and roughing in the rest of that egg. I can double check my table angles one more time. And kind of do those final lines. And please excuse the popcorn next to me if you saw any of that. I was trying to entertain the baby. But just to recap, I've plotted this still life by double checking everything with my pencil. I'm going to go one more time and recap by doing the cast shadows. You can find the measurement by using your thumb. Most importantly, remember, you need to have your arm stretched out and locked and one eye closed. You can find the measurement of anything by marking it with my thumb. Let's do the same on this cast shadow. You can mark how long it should be by measuring it with your thumb. Second, you can check the angle of something by holding your pencil against it. So let's check the top of this cast shadow. Let's find the angle by holding our pencil straight against it, locking our elbow, and bringing it over. It's a little hard holding the camera, but there we go. I'll finalize that. Let's do that one more time on the bottom. Find the angle. And come over and mark it. Okay, and the third way is to double check things relative to other things. Let me fill in notice of this cast shadow so I have something to work with. So I want to make sure that this cast shadow lines up correctly. I'm going to double check it against, double check the end of this against the top of this egg by finding the angle between those two objects. So this cast shadow should go to here. Let me double check the corner of this cast shadow to the corner of this jar by finding the angle in between. And I can double check that angle and see it ends up the same. So, one, measure with your thumb, measuring the spoon with my thumb. 2, check the angle of an object. By holding it up against that edge, just like on this table. Or 3, check the relativity. Make sure I spell that right. Between objects. By finding the angle between them. So the top of the spoon against the corner of this table. And finding the relativity between them and comparing it over here, which lines up. So, use your pencil and you can plot all these things and double check them time and time again. You can check the relativity and the measurements over and over and over again to make sure it's 100% accurate. I did all that without a grid, and I have an accurate rendering now of the still life reference next to me.